took a test in Knoxville and it was positive, like pretty, not as dark as it was when I was pregnant with Grady, but it was there. And then it was like the first response, 3 tests, 3 steps. So it was like 6 days early, 5 days early, and then you take one when your period's about to start. So the 5 and 6, like, I'd rather Grady have a mom than have a sibling. And I went through that. I finally got into a position where I was mentally okay. I am back with a little bit of a, I guess, downer story. I never thought I would have to make one of these videos before, to be honest. It's just one of those things when it happens to you, you're like, holy shit. So I had a really early miscarriage in the past couple of weeks. Oh my god, I just feel like my boobs are just like really showing here. Goodness. And I am here to tell my story. So I guess let's just start from the beginning. I might insert some clips that I was trying to document, like early trimester feelings, second trimester feelings, third trimester feelings, and I think I'll do that one day when I am pregnant again with our second baby, or baby number 2, if you will, rainbow baby now. I guess I'll lead with this, that this is a very fine line of grief and relief. And before I get started, that's kind of what I want to say, is that there's a lot of things I might mention in here that could be trigger warning material, and I do touch on some systemic issues that are unfortunately in this country, that I do need to address, being a Black woman in America, that have been my fears that I talk about a lot on TikTok, not Instagram as much, because TikTok I'm more like my authentic self and I really express my emotions on that app. And if you want to see that side of me, definitely give me a follow. But like what I was saying, it's a very fine line because it happened so early, and part of me is relief that, you know, it wasn't farther along, and I don't want to discredit those stories of women that have been way farther along and have had to do way more horrific, had to make more horrific choices than myself. And I want to lead with that, and that I'm relieved, but also I'm allowed to grieve because I did lose a baby, even though it was very, very early. I don't want to discredit myself or make myself feel invalid. It is a story that I do want to share because I do feel like this happens a lot, especially looking up statistics of this happening to women and how high they are, of the miscarriage umbrella of things. What happened to me is like really high percentage of what happens to women. So let's go ahead and just kind of jump into it. So 2 Saturdays ago, I took a very early pregnancy test. I took it with my first pee of the morning, and I took a clear blue test. And it was very, very faint line, and my period was supposed to start until the following Thursday. And so I was like, okay, this is just really faint because I found out so early. We're so excited. And Greg was like, if you have to pull a flashlight to the test, like, let's go get another test. So I went to Walmart and got like the first response. It was like a 3 test. It was like 6 days early, 5 days early, and then test on your period. Like the day you're gonna have your period. And so the first 2 tests I took, because my period wasn't gonna be happening for 5 or 6 days, and both of those were positive. So I got a yes, I got actual yes, and then I had like a pretty prominent, a lot darker line on this one. It definitely picked up my ACG levels. So something I will like to say is that if you know me in real life, I'm very intuitive, I'm very empathetic, I have a lot of gut intuitions. Even the negative ones kind of come true. Sometimes I'll think things that are happening to me and they happen to my friends, and I'm like, oh, that's the energy that I was feeling. Like I knew something was going on. So I knew something was going on. I felt kind of weird At this point, I only told like my parents, my in-laws, and a couple friends. Like I told like 2 or 3 friends because it was so early, but I told myself like this time around, I will tell more people because I'm gonna need that support if anything goes wrong. And I'm happy that I did because I've had amazing support, and I've had friends really show up for me that are miles away have showed up for me, and I really appreciate them, and I love them so much for that. So definitely get a good support system because you're gonna need one regardless of what happens. And so a couple of days later on Tuesday, I take a clear blue like pregnant, not pregnant test, and that came back not pregnant. And then I took another like line test. I had another faint line, and I was like, maybe I'm just not, progressed enough in my pregnancy for a digital test to show, because I had read that you have to be pretty pregnant for those to show up. Like with Grady, that showed up like 2 days before I missed my period. I was like really pregnant with Grady, and now I kind of know the difference. Like that was a very strong pregnancy. And so then that Tuesday, I was like freaking out. I was Googling everything, and I said, okay, here are the reasons why I might have a faint line. 1, I might be early. 2, it might be a chemical pregnancy. The reason why I did take a pregnancy test too is because I was having very similar symptoms. Like my side boobs were hurting, which is something that happens when I'm really newly pregnant. And I was having really big food aversions, which was really big with Grady. I barely ate my first trimester. And so I was like, okay, like maybe this isn't a chemical. Maybe I'm like low in progesterone and I'm gonna have to get shots. Like, maybe something like that's gonna happen. And so I test again the next day, and I still have a faint line. And in my mind, I'm like, I think I'm having a chemical pregnancy because from what I read and talked to my doctor about, like your ACG level should double over a few days. So that line should be getting progressively darker, and mine just wasn't. If anything, it was getting lighter. And back during that time, I was kind of like in denial, like, I don't know if this is gonna like be good. Like I had in my mind like, yeah, this is not gonna be, I had a feeling that I was gonna miscarry because of how faint my pregnancy test, 1, and 2, they weren't progressing. Because I've seen people like say if any line's there, it's positive, and they've had completely healthy pregnancies and they were fine. So, drink a coffee. Anyway, so then I was like still kind of hopeful. But then Thursday morning, I'm not even being dramatic, I woke up and my pregnancy symptoms went away overnight. Like I had food, my appetite was back, my boobs weren't hurting, and I thought that was weird. But then I remember back with Grady, I didn't really show heavy pregnancy symptoms until like 6 or 7 weeks pregnant. And I forgot to mention, I had already scheduled a doctor's appointment that Friday to get blood work done because I was so nervous about my test being light. And so that Thursday, I ended up starting my period. And thankfully my parents were here and I had someone to lean on for it, and Greg came home and I knew what was happening. It wasn't like implantation bleeding, like it was full period. And I called my doctor and they saw me like that day. And something that I want to preface before I start this next part of the story is, in a post-Roe world, in a red state, I have been terrified, honestly. Like I've been really struggling. Like if it wasn't, the overturn didn't happen, I think I would have been a little bit more optimistic about baby number 2, but I've kind of been in the mentality of let go and let God, intrusive thoughts. And I had a very in-depth conversation with my doctor about 3 weeks before all of this happened. I went to my annual and I talked to him about my concerns, and he reassured me that I was gonna have the appropriate care. And he told me my options, and that, thankfully I'm in Nashville, and these are some of the best hospitals in the country, and he would take care of me if anything were to happen, and that I'm heard and I'm seen. And I'm trying not to cry. Woo-hoo! And I needed to hear that. I've like never cried on camera before, but I needed to hear that because I was so terrified. I was terrified with Grady. I had really bad anxiety then. And I had really bad anxiety this time around because of the racism in the medical industry and not being heard. And I need to get tissues. Oh my God. But as you can tell, it's something that makes me really emotional because I get into my head and it's terrifying. It's terrifying. And when that changed and already being scared because of the statistics of Black women dying more and Black babies dying more, and knowing that I'm in that statistic, like knowing that that could possibly happen to me. And I have been battling a lot of the demons of like, I'd rather Grady have a mom than have a sibling. And I went through that. I finally got into a position where I was mentally okay. And I was like, you know what? Like if it happens, it happens. I'm not going to put pressure on it. I'm not going to, you know, track it and calculate it. And we have to have sex this. I was trying not to be like that. I'm still not trying to be like that because I had a lot of anxiety with it. So I had to really, this was all before I talked to my doctor, and I had this conversation with my doctor and it was a breakthrough. And this is why I did extensive research on who my OB was going to be, because I knew the issues, but way before way before it was trendy to know. I've been screaming it from the rooftops. I've been telling my parents, I've been telling my friends, and I felt like no one really listened to me until it was 2020 and we were locked down. People had to listen, to be honest. Now I have people that listen to me and they validate me and they validate my feelings. I'm really blessed with those people that are in my life. But if you have people in your life that don't validate you, biggest lesson I've learned in my 20s. And anyway, whew, that was deep. But I had a conversation with him. He reassured me, and so I was like, I told Greg, because you know no one talks about how it affects men, especially Black men. You know, like he doesn't want to see me go through anything like that. No one does. And so I was like pretty confident. And so when all this happened, it put action behind his words, because my doctor stepped up and showed out. Like he was really there for me. They saw me that day. He explained to me what happened, and he said, he said, walk me through what happened like the past week. And I told him like everything I just told you. And he was like, this is called a chemical pregnancy. And basically what he said was that potentially, like they're not going to know because you weren't that far along, but I have a friend who was very far along and she got it tested, and this is what happened, is that it was a chromosomal issue and my body canceled it out. And he said you can take it as nature's way or God's way. And that really stuck with me because I'm a firm believer of, oh, my battery's about to die. So basically what I was saying is that he explained to me that that's probably what happened, and that really stuck with me, and it gave me to be at peace with it, you know. And I want to say, if you're someone watching this and this has happened to you, you're not alone. If you're someone who's potentially pregnant, you know, stories like this you're gonna see and hear, and it's hard, but just be grateful, because I know now that not a pregnancy test doesn't always equal a baby. And that was something that was really hard for me to digest. And it was hard for me to tell people too, because like no one really knew I was pregnant. I was only pregnant for like 5 days, if that. And I didn't want to be like, hey, guess what, guys? I miscarried. I mean, I had a miscarriage, and I did text people that, like, hey, I want to give you an update on my life. Like, this is what I've been going through. For my really inner circle people, I did tell majority of them. But I think it's important to talk about it. I think this society kind of has a stigma around the shame that something's wrong, the infertility issues that people may face. That is okay. Like, I think it should be normalized. I think more people should talk about it because it can be very isolating. And the women that have been in my DM saying, I've been through this, thank you for sharing, I feel heard, might not be as open as me or want to share as much as I do on the internet. But I come from a place where I've been isolated. Like, I've walked alone my entire life sometimes. And that could be because maybe I grew up in a predominantly white community that I felt like no one really saw or heard me. That could be like the ugly duckling friend syndrome coming out of me. Like, there's just so many situations how they made me be like this. Because I probably have friends I grew up with that probably had no idea of the obstacles I faced because they just saw me as Cece. They didn't think of me any differently, and God bless them, but it's like, just because you didn't see it doesn't mean it didn't happen. It doesn't mean my feelings are less valid, you know? And with all that being said, I'm grateful because I'm able to I have a baby. And that's another like nuanced experience, is that I have a healthy boy, and I told Grady I was pregnant, and then I had to tell him what happened, and thankfully he kind of understood I was having a baby and having a sibling, but then he kind of didn't. So I'm sure it gets harder and harder as your kids get older, but having to navigate still being a parent is always one of the hardest things for me. And anything that happened, when we lost Louie, our dog, that was one of the hardest things, was to parent through it. And even now, like, I wasn't able to just like go my bed and binge watch TV and like eat a bunch of junk food. I had to still be a parent. I ended up taking the days off of work. Thankfully, my boss was so understanding. I didn't even tell him why. I said, hey, I need mental days off. And I had that support from him, and I had to take those days. Like, Greg took me to do all my favorite things and to make me happy, and I love him for all of that. And everyone was checking in on me. I had people send me like edible arrangements. I had people send me cards, gift cards, and I love gifts. Like, that's one of my love languages, to be able to for it to be received to me. So I love all that. It made me feel better. Some part of me is like, I was so early that of course I'm gonna be like a little sad when I see people that are due in June, because that's when I was supposed to be due. That will be hard, and like, so far pregnancy announcements aren't hard as of yet, but who knows in the future. And now I'm like a little bit more mindful of one day when I am pregnant again, that, you know, so many people go through so many different things, and everything happens for a reason. And I know people that have been in my shoes before, and then they have another baby, they're like, this is why it happened. Like, we wouldn't have this child, and that's something that happened to my mom. Like, she wouldn't have me if she didn't go through what she went through before me. So I'm trying to be more optimistic of like the other side, but also realizing maybe the other side might not happen, and that's okay. And I'm trying to give myself grace and not put pressure on things. I don't really operate that well with structure, I'm realizing. And I just want to live my life the fullest I can, and bring awareness of the intersectionality it is to be a Black woman in America. Post row, and that is my story, and you know, thank you for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Love y'all. Bye.